Hello, Chastity Vega, CEO of the Greater Orlando Builders Association, on set for our very first GOBA BluePrint show. These features are going to have special guests, industry initiatives, some outlooks for the future, keeping you in the know on all things home building. So when we first created the idea of this show, it was a no-brainer to bring one of my special guests with you today and one of my favorite business mentors, and you'll see why here shortly, but none other than Mr. Tony Hartsgrove, CEO of ODC.
Thank you.
Tony, thanks
Glad
so
to be
much.
here.
Thanks so much for being my first guest. I don't think you gave me an opportunity to choose anybody else, but you're it.
Well, you know I don't do a lot of this, and so when you asked, I said, there's just no way I'm not going to be the first Chastity guest. So.
Well, I also know that we're typically on the opposite seat. You've done interviews with Tim Tebow and Dan Marino, so now I get to ask you some hard-hitting questions.
Okay.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So, Tony, for me, I'm really impressed by you. I've told you repeatedly over and over again, right? And you've had some very longevity in your membership and in the home building industry. And so years later now, you're still a part of GOBA. Tell me a little bit about your background in home building and when you were first introduced to the Home Builders Association.
Yeah, so I was hired by Lennar Homes in 1997. And my boss then, George Friedman, was a big contributor and has always still been a big contributor to GOBA. And really, he was my mentor at the time. And we would come back then, there was the men's barbecue and other events like that. And really just kind of exposed me to GOBA, and then it was called the HBA. I think I called it the HBA for about 7 years after it was not the HBA, it was
right.
GOBA. But yeah, and so really it's just been a part of my home building career the whole time. When I was fortunate enough to kind of grow the business at ODC and have and my revenue grow and the chance to have an influence, of course I was going to stay involved with GOBA. It's been humbling really to kind of start where I started as just kind of an assistant superintendent, kind of coming to different meetings at GOBA and really not being kind of in the inner circle, to coming all the way through to being one of the larger supporters and just being a big part of the vision of GOBA. It's the word that I could think of would be humbling. But I believe, in GOBA, and I'm sure you have many questions about that.
And you're absolutely right. So years later, now we're in 2024, and I don't think there's any secret out there that you are one of the highest contributors pushing the initiatives of the Greater Orlando Builders Association. Now, as much as we speak on why people should be a member, it really is a belief system. You have to understand all of the industry issues. And you said one thing to me before that was, I can't imagine a world without GOBA, nobody monitoring the industry and taking a proactive role and removing excessive government. And so what was the why behind your thoughts on being the highest contributor to support our initiatives?
Yeah, I mean, really, GOBA has established itself as the lifeblood of the home building of sort of the Orlando market. And we're the largest contractor in the Orlando market, I guess the state of Florida, but particularly in the Orlando market. And so I kind of believe it's our responsibility for our customers to entrust that much revenue and that much work to us. It just, of course, we're going to give back as much as possible. And I think every time you've asked, we've been able to kind of come in because we think that that's our responsibility. We don't tie our financial commitment to GOBA to any sort of what's happening in the market or not happening in the market. We believe that it's just the first thing that comes out because we believe in supporting GOBA no matter what's going on. And there's been the recession, there's been COVID, there's been all sorts of issues. And what we've just decided that we were going to kind of walk with GOBA and that it was sort of our responsibility in the market as being the market leader in the contracting industry.
Well, and I can tell you on behalf of the board of directors and even myself and my role and all the initiatives of what we tackle, I can't thank you enough, truly, for all your support. It really has allowed the association to flourish in many different ways. So I do appreciate that. But one of the things that I know is that you came into your presidency at a very, probably one of the most uncertain times in history, which will forever be spoken about. And I think your presidency here at GOBA will continue to speak about, because we didn't drop a beat. You were the president in 2020 during COVID, when not only did you focus your initiatives on how you were going to maintain and keep ODC afloat, but you were also the president here and had a responsibility to all of the members and all of its employees here. And you had some really tough, business decisions to make. You had some really strong goals. And so while we may have not had a chance to complete all those goals in 2020, I do believe that in 2024 and leading on to the future, that we've been able to tackle some of those. And so what you saw from 2020 leading into, what we're going to see 2024, 2025, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot. I think you even have to kind of go a few years earlier, and really this is about members identifying leaders, and really Jeff Schnellman came to me. I was kind of an early board member in maybe around 16, and there were a few things I was kind of saying on the board that were kind of falling on deaf ears. I was sort of frustrated with you weren't the CEO then, but I was sort of frustrated with the lack of pushing for revenue in the organization. I felt like that the organization could do more if it could build up more revenue. And what we were doing was taking the existing costs and then just backing into whatever revenue we needed from the costs, and it really just didn't feel like they were trying. And so I was voicing that dissent, and I have a very direct nature, as you know, and so it was Jeff that kind of recognized that, and then we started doing some work, and Bill Silliman, who's been kind of spent his life, another leader. Sort of a person that spent his life, and the three of us really worked on a plan all the way back in 16 and 17 on how to organize the revenue generation machine of GOBA. And it got unpopular to say revenue because it's a nonprofit. At the end of the day, the bigger the revenue, the more the costs can be, and then the more the costs the more you can affect the community. And so I would say it kind of started there as far as my passion. Then getting into the leadership ladder, as it's called, and finally ascending to the presidency in 2020. Yes, it was unfortunate with. Because we had goals, and after organizing the revenue structure, one of the things that I wanted to do in 2020 was really hold members accountable that had been getting the benefits of GOBA, but not necessarily giving back some back. And it doesn't have to be money, right? At ODC, because of the work we do, we're a high ticket for the customer, right? So our customers give us about 30% of the revenue. So whenever they start a house, it's $40,000 or $50,000, sometimes $70,000, $80,000 going to our company. That just creates an enormous amount of revenue, even with kind of less starts than some of the other members. And I don't want to make this very technical, but the reason I'm bringing that out is because of that, we are fortunate enough to have enough revenue to kind of give back. And if you're a painter or if you're a drywall guy, maybe the revenue isn't as big, and so in that case you have more time. And what I really wanted to try to do is focus during 2020 on the members reinvesting either their time or their money as necessary to GOBA, so that we can advance the industry. And because I've been in all kind of phases of the business, and because I've been a purchasing manager on the home building side, and then on the contractor side, I was uniquely positioned to get credibility from both the builders and the subcontracting side. Right. And so I felt like I had a platform to really push the both sides of the business to give back as much. If they had the time, do it. If they had the money, do it. And actually kind of call people out, which is sort of my thing, I guess, and
I've witnessed that before.
yeah, and so I was very focused on that. And then obviously 2020 sort of with COVID, it sort of became about surviving and figuring out a way. We did a lot of work to make sure that we were essential with the governor, and being essential kind of for a lot of businesses meant whether they went out of business or not during COVID. We did a lot of work on sort of how permitting worked and the growth, with the school board. And so we got a lot done. We just had to do it through Zoom and through ways that we didn't normally. But just to sort of put it back onto you for a little bit, we did events in 2020 that nobody did. We did whatever events were possible, we still did. What did that mean? That meant we still got revenue in 2020, and that revenue helped us fight for what we needed in the home building in the home building industry in Orlando. And even though you're interviewing me, I want to make sure people understand that your commitment and this team's commitment in 2020, when things weren't, it would have been easy to stay home and say, hey, we're not allowed to work or whatever. We did every single event that was possible to be done. And I was president, but I didn't do it. It was this team that did it.
I appreciate that. And I did sit through a lot of those meetings in 2017 that were very uncomfortable. And I will tell you how I got through 2020, and each year after that, I think I mentioned this to you just recently, was I a lot of times put my Tony Hartsgrove hat on, which can be scary, by the way, right? I think you and I know. I have a lot of mentors. Some of them don't know that they're my own mentors, but I watch a lot of these successful business people. You are absolutely one of them. And I literally put my what would Tony do in this situation. And it really is, Tony's a go-getter. Tony just makes decisions and, right decisions with a little bit of risk. And so you're just hoping that your passion and your drive behind it is going to bring it to fruition. So for that, I thank you very much. But, we're out of COVID. We are 2024. Orlando still is a very hot market for the industry going into 2025. And I know there's a lot of questions around home building and the future leading up to 2030. What do you see out there in regards to shell contracting and working with all of the builders in Central Florida and even in the Carolinas that you're in now?
Yeah, I think home building at its need is just, you're trying to fill the need of a customer, right? The home builders are trying to fill the need of their customer, that they want shelter. And so there are times that they want shelter as much more or less, and so there's demand more or less. And then the subcontractors are filling the increasing needs or decreasing needs of the customer. And so you're really just trying to figure, in our industry, you're trying to figure out, is there capacity needs? Like in 2006, it was, can you build homes fast enough? Is there pricing needs? In other words, the demand for the home building isn't quite there, and it's not about can you find enough labor, but it's about can we get this thing down to where the right price that we can kind of sell it. And generally, there's just a pendulum going on between capacity needs and and pricing needs in the market. And so right now we're in this kind of weird place where we're almost in equilibrium on that. We're not in a world where capacity is a problem. There's enough labor to get it done. Maybe some guys are unorganized and not getting there, but generally there's enough. Pricing isn't such that the market is plummeting, so we're kind of in this sort of little equilibrium phase. And I think the reason for that is we have the headwind of the interest rate, right? It's not that the interest rate is kind of the biggest problem, because you'll find someone who's our age saying, well, when I first bought a house, it was 7.25. I don't understand why these kids can't do it. It was 7.25. Right, that house was $140,000 and you made $30,000 or $34,000 or whatever it was. Now the house is $450,000, right, and people aren't making $90,000. So the problem with the interest rate is that it's creating an affordability issue because of how much the home costs when wages just haven't escalated to what they were back in the 7%. The tailwind, and what that is doing is it's causing us to just not build as many houses as the demand is there. And so that's going to catch up with us, right? I talk to people all the time. We're sort of in the reverse of the boom. So when we got done and we sort of went back and looked at the tail of the tape after the boom and the crash and the recession and all that, we realized that the loosening of the financial constraints to get a loan allowed us to build 30 to 40% more houses than people needed. People were getting second houses, and obviously this tale has been told a bunch of times. And so we went back and we said, of course there was going to be a crash. We oversupplied the market with 30, regardless of why, the end result is we oversupplied the market. And so if you take it to now, we're going to be in like our third or fourth year of undersupplying the market by sometimes 20, 30, even 40%. And that varies per market, of course. But at the end of the day, since the beginning of time, the two things you can't run from are supply and demand and risk and reward, right? And so if we're not providing enough housing, right, for the demand, it's going to break, and so what generally people believe is that the rate is going to start to come down, and then we're going to make up that gap. When that gap is made up, it's going to be a capacity market, and so then it's going to come down to, do you have the right relationships, labor, that sort of thing, and of course, everybody, it's well documented that our skilled labor is just not quite there where it needs to be.
Right.
It's all the things I just told you are sort of, are not having that be exposed. But when we try to make up that gap, then we're going to get into workforce development. We're going to get into a world where there just isn't enough workforce. And so how well your relationships are, how organized you are, and how ready you are for that is really what's going to come. I don't know if that's too much or if I'm rambling or whatever, but that's my take on the market.
I completely get it. And one of the things that I mentioned, because we do have a workforce initiative here, because that is a conversation that we need to continually have. And that is going to be even 10 years down the road. We are going to continually talk about workforce initiatives. And so as we go through the different phases of the market, of the economy, whether locally or nationally, and even in home building, what does that mean for workforce? So I appreciate those comments on that.
I would like to say something on that. We continue to talk about workforce development, but we don't talk about the technology and the training and the systems development. And so if we're just continuing to try to get more workers into the market, but we're not getting better at how we implement those workers, right? And so you can fix the workforce problem two ways. Like, everybody wants to just get more workers into the market. But if you can be more efficient with the workers that are in the market, and for whatever reason that doesn't seem to be a focus, because we still build homes today the same way we built in like 1972. Agreed. And so what's happening is we talk about workforce development, and we decide the way to do that is to train kids and have them not go to college and have them go to trade school, and I'm for all of that. That's just going to be like sort of a drop in the ocean. What we really need to also be thinking about is the most efficient way to schedule those workers, the most efficient way to implement those workers, and the technology that's out there to do that. We still have guys out there that are just kind of using Excel spreadsheet and cell phone to kind of organize their labor, and that's just not going to cut it.
I think you're exactly right. The skill training part has to be done, but you have to implement a piece of technology. We know how many companies are moving into the Central Florida market that are tech companies, and it is the way of the future. So how do you get those skilled trades to also have a secondary component on the software side, on the tech savvy side? And there's a lot of different things out of there. As a matter of fact, one of the things I wanted to ask you is, and I think I'm getting a lot of phone calls on what's Tony up to? What is Tony up to? Because we've seen you now have a little bit more of a pickup presence on LinkedIn and a lot of different things that are happening in the ODC world. Mm-hmm. And so one of those things is software. You pride yourself on the software that ODC has. But I also know there's some new things that are happening at ODC, which has encouraged your involvement on LinkedIn and your platform on why you are the largest shell contractor in the Southeast. So tell me about your software, about what's new and what's really going on behind ODC that we're all watching.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you letting me have the time to sort of shamelessly pledge, or talk about ODC. But yeah, we're excited. We don't really think of ourselves as a construction company. Right now, we do 6 different scopes of work, right? We do the foundation of the home. We do the block, which is really only Orlando South, because once you get into Jacksonville and North, there is no block, really. We do the framing, the flat work, and then we do siding and trash maintenance. And so we don't really think of ourselves, and a lot of times people call that a shell company because we're building the shell of the house, or they call us a concrete contractor or a framer or any of those things. We don't really think of ourselves as any of that. We think of ourselves as a logistics organization. We don't really ever have our framers do anything that has to do with the slab. Our slab guys have nothing to do with block or trash or anything. We have 6 independent scopes, all done by, when I mean scope, I mean the phase of a house. All of those are done independently of each other, and we believe our task is to efficiently get labor and materials to the job and to really kind of alleviate that responsibility for the production builders so that they can focus on the delivery of the home, and which is really to say that they have the time to kind of spend with the end user, which is the homeowner. And so because of how inefficient the market has become, a lot of the home builders, or because they needed to kind of do whatever they could to kind of get to a price point,
right.
A lot of our customers have sort of gone back and tried to manage some of those things. And what we're trying to do is to logistically solve those things. We know we have to be at the right price point, but we also know that if we can be at the right price point and we can offer more quality, that if the more and more we're a logistics organization, the more and more we can solve the problem for the customer. But really, we think that we have the culture and the technology to be a logistics company to sort of solve as many of the needs for the customer as we can so that they can focus on the delivery of the home.
Well, I'll tell you, Tony, it is very apparent that a company would come in and acquire ODC for all the right reasons, right? I think they look at what you've built over the years. They look at your structure, how you've enabled this entire industry on the largest shell contractor, and you as the leader of that group. So congratulations, that is incredible. You're not leaving GOBA, right?
No.
Okay.
No. If anything, our commitment will just be increased.
There we go.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, you got it on record.
Everybody heard it?
Yeah.
Everybody heard it? It's going to be increased. And if anybody knows, I'm going to hold them to that.
Yeah.
So, Tony, is there anything else that you wanted to talk to? Because, I mean, I am just grateful to have you, a little piece of your time. Yeah. I remember I did get a phone call a few months ago, and they thought that you were a myth. They said, does this Tony Hartsgrove guy really exist? I've only heard the name.
Yeah. Was that my wife calling you or no?
No. She texts me all the time. Where is he?
Yeah. She thinks I'm a myth because I've been working, but yeah.
No, but that's great. But honestly, it really, really means a lot to me to have you here as my first guest on the GOBA BluePrint show. And so hopefully, either please come back, bring me some people, bring me some insight, and I look forward to really just seeing the future of ODC and all that you have accomplished.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate you having me. I consider it an honor, and we will always be committed to GOBA. We believe in GOBA, and I appreciate everything you do, Chaz.
And I appreciate your friendship as well, most importantly. So with that, thank you so much for joining me on the inaugural GOBA BluePrint show. Stay tuned for more shows, more insight with special guest speakers. We have a whole lineup for you. You're going to have to come back and check us out again to see what we have in store for you. But with that, keep calm, build Orlando, and continue to build the American dream. Thank you, Central Florida.